They say fear is the oldest enemy of man, older than war, older than hate, older than pride. Fear was there when we crawled out of caves, when fire was still a miracle, when the unknown was everything outside the circle of flame. But today, fear wears a new face. It's no longer the predator in the dark. It's the doubt in your own mind. It's the hesitation before the leap. It's the voice whispering, "What if I fail? What if they laugh? What if I'm not enough?" Fear has evolved. It doesn't chase you with claws and teeth. It wraps around your dreams. It suffocates your ambition. It convinces you that safe is noble and comfortable is wise. But the truth is this: fear is a liar. It's the most convincing fraud you'll ever meet. It promises protection, but delivers paralysis. It offers security, but steals your future. And every time you choose fear over faith, you trade the life you could live for the life you'll regret. You cannot negotiate with fear. You cannot reason with it. You must learn to destroy it, because fear is not a warning. It's a wall, and walls are not respected. They are broken. So let's begin there with the truth that most never dare to say out loud. Fear is not real, not in the way you think. It's not a law of nature. It's not a universal principle. It's a mental construct, a pattern, a self-reinforcing illusion. Edison knew this. When he failed 1,000 times to invent the light bulb, people mocked him. They asked, "How does it feel to fail 1,000 times?" He replied, "I didn't fail 1,000 times. I found 1,000 ways that didn't work." That is how a mind free from fear thinks. It doesn't interpret failure as death. It interprets it as data, feedback, refinement. Fear turns every setback into a signal to stop. Faith turns every setback into fuel. And what separates the inventor from the spectator, the creator from the complainer, the legend from the forgotten is what they do with fear when it knocks. Do you freeze or do you fight? But fear is subtle. It's not always panic and sweat. Sometimes fear wears a suit. It speaks in logic. It sounds responsible. It says, "Let's wait for the right time." It says, "You're not quite ready." It says, "Be realistic." But realism is often just fear with good PR. If Carnegie had been realistic, he would have stayed poor. If Disney had been realistic, he would have quit after being told he lacked imagination. If Lincoln had been realistic, he would have never run for office after losing over and over again. Greatness is never born from realism. It is born from faith that defies fear. It is carved out of impossibility by those who were told to stop but kept going. So ask yourself right now, whose voice is louder in your life, faith or fear? Because whichever voice you feed, that becomes your master. You want to destroy fear? You must first confront the illusion of control. Fear thrives where control is idolized. It survives in the mind that says, "I need to know how everything will work before I start." But life doesn't work that way. No great journey begins with certainty. The Wright brothers didn't know if their machine would fly. They built it anyway. Ford didn't know if mass production would bankrupt him. He tried anyway. Every entrepreneur, every artist, every visionary in history had to leap before the bridge appeared. Because the bridge never appears for the fearful. It only rises beneath the feet of the bold. And that's the paradox. To destroy fear, you must walk into it, not around it, not above it, through it. It will not vanish before the action. It dissolves during the action. Fear dies when you move. Action is the enemy of fear. Not thinking, not planning, not preparing. Action. Fear feeds on hesitation. It grows in the spaces between your decision and your movement. It thrives in the pause. So if you want to kill it, move. Move before you're ready. Speak before you're confident. Build before the plan is perfect. Launch before the timing feels safe. Because here's the brutal truth. You will never feel ready. Not for greatness, not for risk, not for purpose. Readiness is a myth created by fear to keep you exactly where you are, comfortable, caged, controlled. So you must learn the rhythm of the uncommon man. Feel the fear, move anyway. This is not recklessness. This is courage. And courage is not the absence of fear. It's the refusal to obey it. Let me ask you something. Who would you be if fear never touched you again? Think deeply. Who would you be if rejection didn't scare you? If failure didn't stop you? If judgment didn't shrink you? Would you speak louder? Would you love harder? Would you build something that outlives you? Would you finally become the man the child in you dreamed of becoming? Because that man, he's waiting on the other side of your fear. And the only way to reach him is through the fire. There is no shortcut, no back door, no secret path. There is only fire. And most will run from it. Most will turn around. Most will sell their destiny for the price of comfort. But not you. You've seen what fear costs. You've felt the slow death of hesitation. You've lived in the prison of what if. Now it's time to burn the bridge. Burn the bridge to your excuses. Burn the bridge to your old story. Burn the bridge to the identity that shrinks every time fear whispers in your ear. That version of you, the timid one, the cautious one, the one who sits on ideas and second guesses dreams he doesn't get to live here anymore because you got a new standard now, a new code, a new vision. You don't measure success by applause. You measure it by alignment. You don't calculate risk by fear. You calculate it by faith. You don't chase comfort. You chase clarity. And clarity says this: you were not born to be afraid. You were born to become dangerous to every limitation that tried to bury your greatness. You were born to carry fire in your chest and truth in your voice. You were born to walk into rooms and change atmospheres. You were born to lead. But you cannot lead if fear is your master. So destroy it. Fear cannot survive a man on fire. A man who has seen his own potential and refuses to die with it buried. A man who understands that pain is temporary, but regret is forever. This world doesn't need more careful men. It needs more men who decide to build, decide to speak, decide to love, decide to rise. Because the truth is, fear is not the problem. Indecision is. Every time you hesitate, you feed fear. Every time you delay, you strengthen its grip. But when you decide, when you plant your foot in the ground and say, "This ends with me," fear loses its throne. You take the crown. You become the author, the architect, the ruler of your fate. Because once fear is dethroned, purpose takes its place. And purpose, real, burning, soul-carving purpose, it is not optional. It is not a hobby. It is not something you get around to after your comfort is secured. Purpose is the reason you breathe, the reason your heart beats like a war drum at midnight, the reason silence feels loud because your spirit knows it was built for more than surviving the week. Purpose is a call from eternity, and it does not whisper. It roars, it haunts, it refuses to be ignored. But you'll never hear it clearly until you silence the noise of fear. That's why so many drift. That's why they numb themselves with screens, with distractions, with endless opinions, because fear has made them deaf to their own mission. But not you. Not anymore. You were not built to drift, you were built to drive. You were not made to wander. You were made to wage war on everything that keeps men average. And purpose is your sword. But purpose by itself is not enough. A man with purpose and no discipline is like a lion with no teeth. Majestic in potential, but powerless in action. Discipline is the daily grind that turns purpose into power. It's the bricks that build the legacy. It's the steel spine behind your ambition. You don't get to live with purpose and sleep like a coward. You don't get to walk in calling and bow to comfort. Discipline says, I show up regardless. I train when no one's watching. I execute when my feelings say quit. Discipline doesn't need a cheerleader. It doesn't need motivation. It needs only decision. And the man who masters that, he becomes unstoppable. Lincoln didn't free a nation by doing what was easy. He stood in the fire of criticism, carried the weight of bloodshed, and chose discipline over despair. Discipline is the way out. It is the narrow gate. It is the unglamorous, brutal, holy path that only a few will ever walk, but those few, they change the world. And you will need something else. Resilience. Because even with purpose, even with discipline, you will fall. You will get hit. You will doubt. You will want to disappear. The climb will be steep. Your legs will tremble. Your hands will bleed. Your name will be misunderstood. Your motives questioned. Your efforts mocked. And if fear still has any room in your mind, you will retreat. That is why it must be destroyed, burned to ash, left behind forever. Because resilience is only born in men who no longer entertain fear. Men who look pain in the face and say, "You're not stronger than me. You don't own me. You are not my God." You want to know what builds resilience? Repetition through adversity. You get knocked down, you rise anyway. You hear no, you move anyway. You lose, you learn, you adapt, you come back harder. Because nothing, and I mean nothing, can destroy the man who refuses to stay down. When you learn to rise, you also learn to adapt. And adaptability, that's evolution in motion. The man who adapts is the man who lasts. He doesn't resist change. He bends it to his will. He doesn't panic when the plan falls apart. He sharpens the blade and writes a new one. Fear wants you rigid. Fear wants you fragile. Fear wants you so obsessed with how things should be that you crumble when they aren't. But adaptability says, throw me into chaos, and I'll come out carrying the crown. It is the mindset of every great general, every fearless inventor, every master of reinvention. Napoleon Hill wrote, "When defeat comes, accept it as a signal that your plans are not sound. Rebuild those plans and set sail once more toward your coveted goal." That's adaptability. It's not surrender, it's strategy. It's not weakness, it's warrior intelligence. Because what good is purpose if you can't adjust? What good is vision if a single failure makes you fold? You must become like water, strong enough to break stone, soft enough to flow through cracks, unstoppable, unpredictable, unshakable. And to become that, you must become a student of life, a master of learning, because ignorance breeds fear. Fear festers in the unknown, but knowledge is the cure. Not the kind you memorize, the kind you become. You want to destroy fear forever? Learn more than the man next to you. Learn faster, learn deeper, learn relentlessly. Learn your mind, learn your craft, learn your patterns, learn your pain. Become intimate with discomfort so it no longer intimidates you. Ford didn't fear failure because he understood the machine better than anyone. He made himself a student of the system until he could bend it to his vision. That is how fear dies. You replace it with mastery. And mastery comes through obsession. Don't dabble. Don't dip your toes in greatness. Dive. Dive so deep into your path that fear suffocates in your presence. Because it can no longer breathe in the atmosphere of a man who knows who he is. So now, we arrive at the edge, the place where everything changes. Because when fear is gone, you don't just feel better. You become someone else. You become decisive, relentless, calm in chaos, quiet in storms. You walk into rooms with a fire behind your eyes that no one can name, but everyone respects. People sense it. They don't know what it is, but they feel it in your presence. This man has faced himself. This man has seen the darkness, and he's still standing. He did not break. He became something unbreakable. And the truth is, you were never fighting fear. You were fighting the old version of yourself that believed it. Now that version is gone. And what's left? Something rare, something dangerous, something divine. A man no longer governed by emotion, but anchored in vision. A man no longer ruled by fear, but driven by purpose. And the world will try to put fear back in you, but you'll smile. Because once you've destroyed it, you never bow to it again. Because now you walk differently, not with arrogance, but with authority. You speak differently, not with volume, but with conviction. You live differently, not faster, not louder, but truer. Because a man who has destroyed fear doesn't need to prove himself. He's already met himself. You've seen what's inside you, the fire, the silence, the storm. You've stared down the voices that said, you're not ready, you're not worthy, you're not enough. And you answered with action. You answered with discipline, with vision, with unshakable resolve. You buried your excuses, You lit a torch inside your soul and burned the illusion of safety to the ground. Now there's nothing left to protect, only something to build, only something to become. The world has enough fearful men, enough doubters, enough hollow opinions and quiet suffering. What it needs is a new breed. Men who walk with divine purpose. Men who do not flinch when tested. Men who do not hide their light just because others fear the glare. Men who have stood face to face with fear and refused to kneel. You are that man now. Not because it was easy, but because you chose it anyway. You chose the path few dare to walk. You bled for it. You fell for it. You rose for it. And now you carry something sacred, something no one can steal. Freedom. Because when fear dies, you are finally free. Free to speak. Free to create. Free to lead. Free to love without chains. Free to move without second-guessing your power. Free to build without asking for permission. Free to become everything your younger self prayed you'd be. And from this moment forward, you no longer ask, what if I fail? You ask, what if I never become the man I was born to be? Because that's the only failure now. Living beneath your calling. Playing small. Shrinking when the world needs you to expand. Hiding when the fire in you is meant to lead others home. You're not here to chase comfort. You're here to bring light into the dark, to build a legacy that fear could never understand. And when the old voice comes back, the one that whispers, you can't, you're not ready. You should wait. You'll laugh, because you'll know that voice is already dead, and you are just getting started. This is your era, your storm, your mountain. Fear is no longer your master. You are.